Hello, friends. So, Bible study, the NIV, 1 Corinthians, chapter 12, verses 27, and we're going to go into chapter 13. Chapter 12 stops at 31. Chapter 13 to verse 13, which I have to say, chapter 13 is probably one of the most quoted of the whole Bible. And for good reason, for very good reason. And it's like I'm looking forward to reading it too. So, chapter 12, verse 27. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it. A part of it. You're not the same parts. Stop looking at everybody around you and saying there's only one right way and God only gives gifts this way, or it's only good if it's this, or it's only these tools and no other tools and only this. That's human limitation. You're putting limitations on God and then vilifying people who don't fit your limitations of God. And in the church, God has appointed, first of all, apostles. Second, prophets. Okay, now we're going to come back to that term prophet. Prophet is a Jewish term. Before one can be a prophet, first one must be a psychic. Now you can yell and scream about how they said kill all the psychics. The difference between a prophet and a psychic is a prophet focuses their attention on God. They're getting their information from God. They're using their tools, praying over the tools, so that the attention is focused on the only person that they want to talk to. Now, either you believe the word of God can clear the room, and it actually has the ability to cast out demons, and it's enough to clear and sanctify anything, including any tool, or you believe there are limitations on how Jesus can come save you. And what a foolish thing for you to have, putting limitations on Jesus or God. Now, it's also a perfectly normal thing, human thing to do. It's called fear. You're allowing your fear to override your faith, and it's part of the human condition. So congratulations. And you can see the difference in the Old Testament if you would like to argue with me. We had Moses and we had Balaam. And the actions that they were taking were one and the same, and we know that because Balaam said so. He told the other king, who was also a descendant of Israel, because Esau had his own family. It wasn't just Jacob. And Abraham had other children, right? So these things, like other people in the area can claim descendancy from the same. The Egyptians are descendants of Noah's too. Like, it's not, that area is populated by the descendants of Noah. Okay, so if the genetics are that similar, and they are, there's very little difference between Armenian, Assyrian, and a Jew, because it comes from the same root stock, the same descendancy from the same father line, from the different mother lines. Okay? Because one type of DNA only comes from mothers. Mitochondrial DNA is identical, and it stays more consistent for longer, which in the Jewish culture is why they say you're only a Jew if your mom's a Jew. That's why it was a big deal to marry women from other cultures. It wasn't really about the race, it was about the religion. If they became a Jew, like Ruth, then they could be celebrated and just be treated like a Jew. Not treated like you're not quite a Jew, because you came from somewhere else. That's a human thing. Prophets have the same gifts as psychics. Moses was only focused on God and only wishing to do what God wanted him to do, to live the will of God. Prophet. Moses is the definition for every other prophet of what a prophet is. We can't have consistent superpowers as prophets because Samson couldn't control his ego. He used his abilities, his superpowers given from God, to harm others. So he's kind of like that guy who decided he was going to try to set off a bomb in his shoes, and now when we go through the airport, we got to take our shoes off. But not everybody has to take their shoes off, right? Some people can go through some security checks from people who are in authority, so they don't have to go through additional security, and they might not have to take their shoes off before they get on the airplane. We don't come up with anything new in this world. We only repeat what God has already taught us. Same concept of the prophets. They are people who have abilities because they have exceptional faith and they have walked down a path of trying to become their better selves. And what the Old Testament likes to show us regularly is you can do that, get the abilities, have them, misuse them, fall, lose them, and go back through that cycle all over again. That is what the tree of life is. You're supposed to go through those cycles over and over and over again. And that is also a Jewish thing. So the prophets come after the apostles. Third, teachers. Then workers of miracles, which I'm going to tell you, also those having the gifts of healing. In these days, workers of miracles and having the gifts of healing are usually one and the same because miracles are few and far between these days. Those able to help others. I mean, everyday miracles are everywhere. I can say that because we have a lot of more disciples in the world than there ever was in the beginning part of the church, most definitely. So if people are remembering their better nature, we have far more earth angels. I'm not saying we're going into worse. I'm saying that those displays of miracles like we got to see from the prophets in those big kind of showy ways are not really where, if you're looking for that, me too. Let me know if you find it. Those with the gifts of administration, so being a leader is a gift, and those speaking in different kinds of tongues are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all have the gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? But eagerly desire the greater gifts. Okay? These gifts are each parceled out in accordance to, however God has pre-wired you. Your gift and somebody else's gift, even if you're in the same profession, they don't necessarily look like the same thing. You can be, I'm very good at being direct. I'm very good, like my MBA is in an emphasis in marketing. So I think about how I word things. I think about this, how is it? What message am I trying to send? What am I really trying to be on point with? It's a good practice because it helps me, clarify better. It helps give me discernment. It helps make sure I have a back check to make sure I'm staying in the divine message and not speaking from my ego and all kinds of other things, because you have to have a check and balance. If you're going to walk around thinking that you just can't be, right? And you can't be wrong, or you're already wrong. You're already in your ego. You're already on the wrong place. We're all meant to be teachable for our whole life. Just sometimes you're going to be the teacher and sometimes you're going to be the learner. And honestly, when you're teaching, you also learn. Because as you go through the subject matter, you might get a question you didn't get before. It makes you think about things in a new way. That's the way, this is just how this is. Now, not everybody's got the same skill sets. So you have to compensate for the skill sets they have. But it doesn't mean you can only apply that skill set in that one location. There's a lot of different ways, and that's a matter of choice, just like psychic versus prophet. How do you want to apply the gift? That's what determines Who are you serving? Who are you choosing? Me and my house, we serve the Lord. If you're watching this, you probably at least want you and your house to serve the Lord. You probably don't feel like you're doing it very well. I can tell you sometimes I don't feel like I'm doing it very well, because sometimes the human condition means we're not going to do it very well. We have to forgive ourselves and try again. We can't allow the shame or the guilt to make us hide. He sees it everything anyway. Trying to hide from him is actually rather foolish. You're wasting your time, and you'll move. You're better served by just apologizing and then acting right. And he'll, he goes lighter on you because he wants you to succeed. And what's important to him is that you get the lesson and you change what he wants you to change. He's not focused on keeping you in punishment for a certain amount of time. That's not the point. He's also a teacher, remember? He is a rabbi. So I can tell you, here's a good thing for multiple skills. I know somebody who is a teacher. He is a teacher of special education children. So he, by nature of his profession, has to find a lot of different ways to explain the same thing while keeping it engaging and interesting. So if I am, as a person who's making sort of products or any of the rest of that stuff with that emphasis in marketing, and I want to come up with what you need to put in there, I can also talk to this person and tell you he is a slogan generator. He just pops it out. You tell him what you're trying to do, what the product does, like what it is, and he'll just, until something finds that really sticks. And of course he has that skill set. Of course he could go use that in that environment if that's what he wanted to do. Because he has spent 20, 30, I don't know, something, it's like a ridiculous, over 25 years, I believe, years of his life teaching special education children. It's all a matter of how you choose to use it. And I'm not saying one of those professions is nobler than the other. You could do both at the same time, if that's what you wanted to do. As long as you're doing it with the right intention and heart, that's what matters. If we didn't have marketing, we wouldn't know what products do. So we wouldn't know what resources we have. So we have to have them. There is no such thing as an ignoble profession. It's a matter of how you put yourself in that profession. How are you showing up to the world while you're in it? Chapter 13, this parable is called Love. Verse 1. Well, actually, this is actually sort of the end of the parable before, the one body, many parts. And now I will show you the most excellent way. Chapter 13, verse 1, in the parable, Love. If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. Now I'm going to give you, I agree with all of this. This is why it's a joy to read. But I will also give you the caveat that a majority of everything you're doing with this vessel happens in your subconscious mind. Because you don't have to think breathe to breathe. You just breathe, right? That's your programming. It's in your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is between 3 and 7 years old. And if you want to get rid of any bad habits that you are having, any bad ways that you're acting where you know it's something like, I don't know, because it could be any number, emotional eating, smoking, drinking, I mean, whatever it is for you, because it can be anything. Anything can become an addiction if you do it in excess. So if you're in that place where you're battling those kinds of things, the problem you've got is your child self is unhappy, and they are not going to let you stop those things until you stop and talk to them and you make them feel all better. Just like when you were a child, you needed comforting. Only now you're the person who has to give the comfort. You can seek it from God, and you can have him help you talk to your subconscious mind. You can undergo various types of therapies, including hypnosis, which is what I learned to do. I am a certified hypnotherapist, and I did, and have, will, whatever, past, present, future, as needed, use it on my own self. It's very powerful. So, especially if you record it in your own voice. Because you are more likely to convince you that you want to do something than anybody else in the world ever is. That's what I found. I'm a very stubborn person. So I think that's the way I would approach it myself. When giving anything, I would help a person write a script for what their issues that they're focusing on are, and let them record it themselves. So they listen to it themselves, so that there's less argument with oneself. Because you really have to have trust. And if you have trust issues, which I most definitely did, that's the way I found to conquer it. There's a conversation now that goes back and forth. For instance, all the snacks are in the house that are the snacks that make her happy, and we're not trying to pretend like they have to be other snacks. Instead, what we're doing is regulating when we can have snacks, just like you would if you were interacting with your 6-year-old. No, you can't have a snack now, but you can have that snack with lunch, or it can be your snack that you have in between breakfast and lunch, or lunch and dinner, or you can have it as your bedtime snack, right? But you can have this much of it, because there has to be a way to keep that inner child happy, because it's so integral to yourself, and you'll be fighting yourself if you don't. But you do have to interact with it like you're the adult in the room. Your conscious mind is the adult in the room. Your childhood self will always be with you, and you don't want to lose it, because that's where your creativity comes. That's where your trust comes from, your unconditional trust that you had as a child for your parent, which may or may not have been betrayed depending upon your childhood. Right? It's what makes you enjoy things. It's what makes you laugh. It's what brings you that silliness that is essential to your life, like air and water. That comes from there. You can't get through life without nurturing your inner child. And as you nurture your inner child, you will return to a closer relationship with Creator. You have to learn to trust again. It's essentially what it is, starting with Him. And then with you. Because those two things are actually one and the same, in my opinion. You can have a different one if you prefer. Verse 12. Now we see but a poor reflection, as in a mirror. Then we shall see face. I'm sure it's to face. Yes, face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know in fully, even as I am fully known. You can gain those powers, you can lose those powers. He gave them, He took them away. The dark can't give them at all. They all come from Him. So, but you can come out of alignment when the dark is whispering in your ear. It starts as the thought in your head that becomes a doubt. becomes a fear, something that overrides your brain, and it's natural to the human condition. But you're not going to get rid of it without facing it and telling that inner demon to shut up. You can't tell your brain not to think of it. You have to tell yourself what you're going to think of instead. The brain cannot just not think. It can be focused on other things. I mean, when you think the people are sitting there and meditating, not if they're chanting Om, not if they're thinking the word Om, they're just focused on one thing. And you can do that in a variety of ways. You don't have to do that by actually sitting still and just closing your eyes. Choose any art form and really focus on it. And then you're in the same state. Still a meditative state. It's just a moving meditative state. It's possible. It depends on each person. And that is how you will get more fully known. When you slow down and you give him an opportunity to respond. Stop trying to move so fast. Verse 13. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And you can want to doubt the Apostle Paul there all you want, but I'm going to remind you once again, the only commandment Jesus gave us before he left was to love one another. And to love one another does mean there's a way to make amends, but it also does mean the other person respects you enough to make amends. It is a two-way street. So make sure you're in the right room. But when you're in the right room, make sure you show them faith, love, and hope. And that would include trust, because there is no love without trust.